The night air in Willow Creek carried a kind of cold that crawled straight through bone. I was standing on the porch when Lauren's voice cut through the December wind like a blade. "You contribute nothing, Mother." The words hit harder than the suitcase she flung at my feet. It landed with a heavy thud that seemed to echo down the quiet street. Neighbours peeked from behind their curtains, pretending to be adjusting blinds, pretending not to listen. But they heard everything. Everyone did. Lauren stood at the doorway, arms crossed, eyes blazing under the porch light. "You eat, you sleep, you complain. That's all you do. I'm done carrying dead weight." Inside, her friends kept drinking, the sound of laughter clashing with the faint hum of a Christmas carol playing on her phone. I saw their silhouettes reflected in the glass, unmoving, unwilling to intervene. Even her best friend, Paula, the one who had eaten at my table for years, wouldn't meet my eyes. My coat lay in a heap beside the suitcase. Next to it was the little box I had wrapped for Lily that morning, an old book I loved as a child, pages soft from years of turning, notes in the margins I'd written just for her. Lauren pointed at it like it was trash. "This is what you bring my daughter? A crusty old book? God, Mother, you embarrass me." I wanted to tell her that Lily adored that story, that I had reread it just to mark the parts that made me laugh and cry so we could share them together. But Lauren wasn't listening. Her fury had its own rhythm now, practiced, familiar. "I work every day to give Lily a future," she said. "And you just sit. You don't even try." I didn't answer. I'd learned silence was the only language anger couldn't twist. Then she shoved a white envelope into my hand. "I bought you a bus ticket. Shady Oaks Nursing Home. You'll have food, nurses and space to breathe. This house deserves peace." Lily came out from behind the staircase, her small hands clutching that same book. Her voice trembled. "Grandma, please just go for a while. I'll bring you back. I promise." I crouched, knees aching, kissed her forehead and whispered, "You're my brave girl." Then I picked up my suitcase, stepped off that porch, and didn't look back. Not at Lauren, not at the wreath we made together last week from pine needles and twine. As the bus engine roared in the distance, one thought settled quietly in my chest like a secret returning home. Lauren forgot who truly owns this house. She thought she was sending me away for good. But what she didn't know was that I still held the deed to every wall she stood behind. The bus stop was only 5 blocks from the house, but every step felt longer than the years I'd lived under that roof. The cold Tennessee wind gnawed at my cheeks, sharp and mean, but I kept walking. Not because I had nowhere to go, but because I remembered something Lauren had chosen to forget. The deed. It was 1997 when my numbers matched the state lottery. It wasn't much, but it was enough to pay off my debts, buy a little house on Maple Street and tuck the papers under my name. Margaret Ellis. Lauren was only 12 then. She thought her late father's pension had finally cleared. I never corrected her. It was easier that way. When she lost her job years later and asked to move in, just for a little while, I said yes without hesitation. She needed help, and I had space. That was 6 years ago. Since then she changed everything. The furniture, the locks, even the story of how that house came to be. Somewhere along the way she decided it wasn't mine anymore. At the station, I sat on a metal bench that smelled like rust and rain. My fingers still held the envelope she'd pressed into my palm. A one-way ticket, like she was erasing me from a life I had built. Around me, people waited for buses with tired eyes, carrying too many bags and too few dreams. I stared at my suitcase. The handle was frayed, just like me. Worn, but still holding together. As the streetlights flickered on, my mind drifted backward, peeling through the layers of time like old wallpaper. I could see the kitchen of our first home again, yellow linoleum floor, the smell of burnt toast, and the sound of my daughter's laughter before grief taught her how to hate. Lauren was 7 when her father died. A mining accident took him before dinner one Thursday. I got the call at 4:18 p.m, right after the school bell rang. I still remember standing in my classroom doorway, the phone pressed to my ear, trying to breathe while 20 children packed their bags around me. That night, I sat outside Lauren's bedroom door, listening to her silence. She never cried. She just turned away, and I spent the next 10 years trying to reach her through walls I couldn't see. When she turned 16, she met a boy. Slick hair, too much charm, too little soul. I warned her, told her I'd seen his kind before. But warnings from mothers sound like jealousy to daughters in love. I thought heartbreak would teach her what I couldn't. But when she came back home bruised and broken, I learned that pain doesn't always make people wiser. Sometimes it just makes them cruel, When Lauren came back after that boy, she was 20, and she looked older than I'd ever seen her. Her cheek was bruised, her lip split, and her belly slightly swollen. She said it was an accident, that he just got angry. I wanted to scream that love doesn't come with bruises, but she wouldn't hear me. She said I never understood her, that I never let her live. A week later, she lost the baby. The hospital called me, not him, because I was still listed as her emergency contact. I rushed there with clean clothes and a sandwich, hoping food might do what words couldn't. She didn't eat. She didn't even look at me. When I touched her hand, she turned her face toward the wall and whispered, "You did this, Mother. You made me leave him. You made me lose everything." I froze. The nurses moved around us like ghosts. I wanted to tell her that he, not I, had done this. But grief needs a villain, and I was the easiest one to blame. From that day on, Lauren rewrote our history, one cruel sentence at a time. She told her friends I was controlling, told her co-workers I was cold, told the neighbours I never helped with her child. She built her version of the story like a house of mirrors, one where she was the wounded hero and I was the monster in the reflection. And I let her. Because the world is always ready to believe a daughter who cries about her cruel mother. There's no point shouting into a storm that's already decided who the thunder belongs to. Years later, when she moved back in with Lily, her pity turned into power. At first, she said I couldn't sit at the dining table anymore. "Lily needs the space for her art projects," she said. So I ate on a little folding tray in the laundry nook, near the dryer. The chair was uneven, one leg shorter than the rest, so I stuffed an old rag under it to keep from rocking. Then she told me not to use the stove after I left a burner on once. "It's just safer this way," she said, handing me a hot plate and telling me to cook in the garage with the door half open for ventilation. My room became the storage closet at the end of the hallway. No windows, one lamp, a thin mattress on the floor surrounded by old boxes. I kept my slippers beside me, lined up neatly. I didn't complain, I didn't cry. But some nights I could hear her laughter through the walls, that new kind of laughter that sounds like victory. Rehook. I thought she couldn't take more from me, but I hadn't yet seen how far a daughter could go to erase her own mother. It started with a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. Lauren's bedroom door was half open, and her voice carried down the hallway like smoke. I was folding Lily's socks by the laundry room, keeping quiet the way I'd learned to. "Yes," she said into the phone, her tone sharp and businesslike. "The house is fully paid off. No mortgage. I just need the loan approved this week." There was a pause. Then her voice shifted, soft and sly. "Proof of ownership? Of course, it's mine. My name's on the mailbox, isn't it? My mother just stays here." The words hit me harder than any slap could. I froze, the socks falling. The next morning, while Lauren thought I was scrubbing Mrs. Klein's basement down the street for extra cash, I took the early bus into town. I hadn't dressed up in years, but that morning I put on my navy coat, the one with the missing button, and tied my scarf neatly beneath my chin. Downtown Willow Creek looked the same as it had 20 years ago, same courthouse, same bakery smell, same creaking flagpole in front of the post office. But this time, I wasn't running errands. I was reclaiming my life. I found the business card tucked inside the blue folder, the lawyer who'd handled my house paperwork decades ago, Mr. Fallon Associates. The handwriting was faint, but I remembered the address by heart. When I walked into the office, the young receptionist looked up with polite confusion, probably expecting someone who needed a will updated or a small claim handled. "Do you have an appointment, ma'am?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I think Mr. Fallon will remember me." He did. Within minutes, an older man with silver hair and a kind smile stepped out from behind his office door. "Margaret Ellis," he said, his face lighting up. "I'll be damned. It's been, 25 years?" "Closer to 30, I replied, "but I think it's time we revisit some old paperwork." We sat in his office, surrounded by shelves of dusty law books and the quiet ticking of a clock that sounded like patience itself. I showed him everything: the deed, the forged form, the inheritance clause I'd added years ago naming Lily as beneficiary. Mr. Fallon leaned back, hands folded. "So?" he said gently. "What do you want to do, Mrs. Ellis?" I stared at the sunlight spilling across his desk, soft but steady. "I want to prepare," I said. Quietly. He nodded, as if he understood exactly what kind of war an old woman could still fight. By the time I left, I had 2 notarized copies of updated documents, one to keep, one to lock in his office safe. As I stepped back into the chill air, I felt something inside me loosen for the first time in years. Lauren had spent so long believing my silence meant weakness. But I was never weak. I was waiting. Watching. That night, when she live-streamed herself cleaning the house for her online followers, laughing and calling me the ghost in the laundry room, I didn't flinch. She wanted an audience. She'd get one, just not the kind she expected. Because the next time Lauren went live, her own words would become the proof that buried her lies. Lauren had always loved attention, but after she discovered people would actually watch her online, she began to love it in a new way, the kind of love that grows loud and cruel. One Saturday morning, I was in the garage folding laundry near the old hot plate when I heard her voice rising above the hum of her phone camera. "Hey everyone, welcome back to another declutter day," she said brightly. "Time to finally clear out the junk my mum's been hoarding since the 80s. Her followers laughed and sent heart emojis that flashed across her screen. I could hear the delight in her tone. She was performing. Then came the sound of shuffling boxes. "This," she said, holding up one of my scarves, "smells like regret and mothballs. Honestly, I should just burn it." She tossed it into a trash bag. The audience reacted with laughing emojis. My heart sank. Not from humiliation, that feeling had long passed, but from disbelief at how far she'd fallen. She kept going. "I love my mom, okay? But let's be real, she's toxic. She's been sitting around for years acting like a victim. You can't build your future if you're surrounded by people who drain you like parasites." The words hit harder than the winter chill. I stood perfectly still behind the half-open garage door, watching dust float in the sunlight. I thought of Lily, who was somewhere in the house listening. And then, like fate itself decided to open its eyes, Lauren said the line that changed everything. "You all want to hear something funny?" she said, laughing. "The only reason this house isn't in my name already is because the bank wants my mum's stupid signature. I literally had to fake it just to get things moving. Don't cancel me. I had to." The comments exploded. Some laughed, some gasped. She waved it off like a joke. But it wasn't. Not for me, not anymore. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I simply closed the laundry basket and walked back to my room, heart steady, mind sharp. Later that night, Lily slipped a tiny USB drive into my hand. "I recorded everything," she whispered. "She deleted it, but I saved it first." For the first time in years, I held my granddaughter close and whispered, "You are your mother's child in spirit, but my daughter in strength." That night I sat at my desk, the blue folder open, the USB beside it. I called Mr. Fallon and told him I had something he needed to see. Lauren thought she was streaming entertainment, but what she'd really broadcast was her own confession to 5,000 witnesses. The next morning, I tucked the USB drive safely inside my coat pocket and rode the 7:15 bus downtown. The sun was still rising over the rooftops, painting the streets of Willow Creek gold, but my hands were cold around the proof I carried. When I stepped into Mr. Fallon's office, he looked up from his desk and smiled politely until he saw my expression. "You brought something?" he asked. I nodded and handed him the drive. "It's all there." Her words, her face, her laughter. She confessed in front of thousands. He plugged it in and pressed play. Lauren's voice filled the room, that bright, careless tone she used when she thought the world adored her. "I literally had to fake my mom's signature," she bragged. Then laughter, comments pinging, her smug little smile frozen on the paused frame. Mr. Fallon leaned back slowly. "She just handed us everything," he said. "You understand, Mrs. Ellis, this isn't just a civil matter anymore. This is forgery, elder abuse, attempted fraud." I nodded, feeling calm. "I'm not looking for revenge," I said quietly. "I just want my name back." He smiled faintly. "Then we'll let the truth do the talking." That afternoon we filed the official complaint. The bank froze Lauren's loan application before the ink on her form could dry. Her account was flagged, and within 48 hours, the first notice arrived at the house. Lauren read it at the kitchen table, still in her robe, her coffee untouched. Her eyes darted across the page, widening with each line. Then her hand slammed the table so hard the mug cracked in two. "What the hell is this?" she shouted. "You reported me." I folded the dish towel in my hand. "No," I said softly. "You reported yourself. I just made sure someone was listening." She tore the paper in half and stormed down the hallway, her footsteps shaking the floorboards. I stayed still. I'd learned the power of stillness. That night, she tried to go live again, to explain, to spin, to cry on cue. But the platform had already suspended her account for violating community guidelines. Fraud and defamation aren't good for brand partnerships. By the next morning, neighbours began whispering. A few came by with polite pity in their eyes, pretending not to know what had happened. Only one woman, Mrs. Keller from next door, brought cookies and said softly, "Not everyone believed her, you know." I smiled. "That's kind of you." Inside the tin was a note written in Lily's uneven handwriting. "I know the truth, Grandma. I always did." I pressed the note to my heart. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible, but the truth doesn't stay quiet forever. And when it finally spoke, it echoed inside a courtroom where Lauren's lies could no longer hide. A week later, we stood in front of the county courthouse. The sky hung low and grey, the kind of morning that feels like it's holding its breath. I clutched my worn handbag, the blue folder tucked safely inside, while Lauren adjusted her blazer, a size too tight, pretending confidence she didn't have. Inside, the courtroom smelled faintly of dust and coffee. The judge was a woman about my age, with calm eyes that looked like they'd seen too many family feuds. She studied us both for a long moment before speaking. "Mrs. Lauren Carter, you've been charged with document forgery and attempted financial fraud against your mother, Mrs. Margaret Ellis. How do you plead?" Lauren's voice wavered. "Not guilty. I was, confused. I didn't mean..." But then Mr. Fallon stood. "Your Honour, if we may present Exhibit A." He played the video. There she was. Lauren laughing on her live stream, hair perfect, eyes sparkling with self-importance. "The only reason this house isn't in my name already is because I had to fake my mum's signature," she said to 5,000 viewers. The courtroom went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights above us. The judge leaned back slowly. "So, Mrs. Carter," she said, voice steady, "you're confirming this video is authentic?" Lauren's face turned pale. "That was a joke. I was joking." The judge raised one eyebrow. "It's a strange joke to broadcast a felony to the public." I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just breathed. Mr. Fallon submitted the notarized deed, the inheritance clause naming Lily, the affidavit, and copies of the forged documents. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. When the judge finally ruled, her voice was clear and firm. Lauren Carter is hereby ordered to vacate the property within 30 days, pay restitution for legal fees, and is barred from any future ownership claims. Lauren turned to me, eyes wide and furious. "You're throwing your own daughter out? After everything I've done for you?" I met her gaze. "You took everything from me and called it love. This—" I gestured toward the courtroom. "This is simply balance." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. When it was over, she packed her things in silence. No audience, no stream, just cardboard boxes and a rented truck idling at the curb. Lily stood beside me on the porch, holding my hand as her mother drove away without saying goodbye. The house felt quiet again, not empty, not cold, just free. That night, the local news ran a short segment about the case. A landmark decision in elder financial abuse, they said. A reminder that even silence has limits. When the reporter asked me how I felt, I answered softly, "Guilt is something people expect you to carry for them, but burdens, my dear, are meant to be set down." Rehook. For the first time in years, the house was truly mine again. But I knew its purpose wasn't just to shelter me. It was meant to shelter the forgotten. 1 week after Lauren left, I walked through every room of the house in silence. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy. The walls didn't seem to hold their breath. The quiet was different now. Not lonely, not tense, but clean. I ran my fingers along the living room wall she had painted that modern grey she loved so much. In a few tiny cracks, I saw a glimpse of pale blue underneath, the colour I had chosen decades ago when this house was new. It peeked through like memory, refusing to fade. I smiled. "You're still here," I whispered to the wall. That afternoon, I called Mr. Fallon. "It's time," I told him. He knew exactly what I meant. Together, we arranged the paperwork. I didn't transfer the deed back to myself. No. I gave it to a local non-profit I'd quietly supported for years. Mothers of Grace, a community shelter for elderly women abandoned by their families. The agreement was simple. I would live here for the rest of my days, and after me, this place would become a permanent sanctuary for women like me, women who were silenced, dismissed, or simply forgotten. We started small. I cleaned every corner, patched the old wallpaper, and turned the garage into a reading room. The attic became a quilt workshop. A local church donated beds. A carpenter built a ramp by the porch. A neighbour painted the sign, Grace House. Then the women began to come. First was Evelyn, a retired nurse whose son left her in a motel with $20 and a note. Then came Clara, whose daughter moved 3 states away and never called. Then another, and another. Each woman arrived with nothing but a grocery bag and a story. They called me Miss Margaret. Some called me Mama M. They helped me cook, sew, and repaint the kitchen a warm gold. At night, we sat on the porch with tea, listening to the crickets and laughing about things that once made us cry. And then, one October afternoon, as the air turned sharp and the leaves began to fall, I saw a familiar face at the gate. Lauren. She stood there, hair messy, eyes hollow, clutching a plastic bag of clothes. "I just need a place to sleep," she said. "Just for a few days. I'll be quiet." My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I looked at her, then at the sign over the porch. Grace House. Rehook. And I realized mercy and weakness are not the same. But that night she was about to learn the difference. Lauren stood at the gate for a long time before she spoke again. Her voice had lost its edge, or maybe it had simply worn itself dull over time. "Please, Mum," she said. "I just need a room, just somewhere to breathe. I'll find work soon." I stepped onto the porch, the wooden boards creaking beneath my slippers. Behind me I could hear the soft hum of the women inside, dishes clinking, laughter spilling faintly through the open window. The house felt alive now, in ways it never did when it was only mine and Lauren's. I studied her face, thinner, older, the makeup gone, the pride cracked. She looked less like my daughter and more like a stranger wearing her skin. "You once told me," I said quietly, "that I smelled like dust and pity, that this house needed to breathe without me in it." She looked down. I was angry. "You were cruel," I corrected gently. "There's a difference." Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. "I've got nowhere else to go," she whispered. I sighed. "Neither did I once, but you didn't open the door then." She flinched, her shoulders curling in like she wanted to disappear. For a moment, the mother in me wanted to step forward, to hold her, to forgive her completely. But then I remembered the cold nights in the storage room, the years of silence, the laughter at my expense, and the bruises she left on my dignity. "This house isn't mine anymore," I said softly. "It belongs to women who were thrown away by the people they loved. I can't turn it into a refuge for everyone except the one who taught me what being discarded feels like." Her lips trembled. "So that's it? You're shutting me out?" I gave a small, tired smile. "No, Lauren. I'm setting a boundary. You can't build peace where cruelty once slept." For a moment neither of us spoke. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere inside someone laughed, a sound full of life, not bitterness. Then I said the last thing I ever would to her. "This house doesn't take garbage anymore." Her mouth fell open, but no sound came out. I turned, stepped back inside, and closed the door. Not with anger, but with peace. Behind me, the laughter of my new family carried softly through the hall. I realized forgiveness didn't always mean reopening the door. Sometimes it just meant walking away without hate. Rehook. But as one door closed, another opened, because a week later Lily came back, holding her school bag, and a decision that would change both our lives. It was a week after Lauren left when I heard the soft knock on the door. Evening light spilled through the front windows, painting the floor gold. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened it. Lily stood there, backpack slung over one shoulder, her eyes red but steady. "Grandma," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "can I stay here? For good?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. The child who used to hide behind staircases was now tall enough to look me in the eye. I saw both her mother and myself in her, the same stubborn chin, the same flicker of hurt buried under hope. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" I asked. "Your mother—" "I don't want to be around her yelling anymore," she said firmly. "I want to help. I want to do what you do here, take care of people, teach, be kind." Her words cracked something open inside me that I didn't realize was still healing. I reached for her hand. "Then you're home," I whispered. We filed the papers quietly. Mr. Fallon handled everything with his usual patience. The court granted temporary guardianship without contest. Maybe Lauren knew she couldn't fight it, or maybe she just didn't have the energy anymore. Lily became the youngest volunteer at Grace House. She made name tags for everyone and helped Evelyn learn to use a phone again. She painted toenails, peeled apples, and read bedtime stories aloud to women who hadn't heard kindness in years. She also started a notebook titled Kindnesses, where she wrote down every good thing she saw each day. Mrs. Clara saved me the biggest peach. Miss June taught me to braid my hair. Grandma didn't cry once today. I didn't even realize I'd been crying until she noticed I'd stopped. The women adored her. Their laughter filled every corner of the house. It no longer echoed with loneliness, but with life. The scent of soup, polish, and lavender replaced the old mustiness of resentment. One afternoon, Lily stood in the middle of the living room, sunlight pouring over her hair, and said, "You know what this house feels like, Grandma?" I smiled. "What's that, my love?" She thought for a moment, tapping her chin. "It feels like peace that finally found a place to sit down." And she was right. Every scar in that house, Every nail, every patched crack had become part of its strength. Rehook. But peace isn't the end of every story, it's the beginning of a new one, and mine wasn't over yet. A full year has passed since the trial, though it feels like a lifetime. Seasons have rolled gently over Willow Creek, spring into summer, summer into fall, and still, every morning, the house wakes up warm and full. Grace House has become more than shelter. It's a pulse, a rhythm of second chances. Women arrive with little more than a plastic bag and the weight of silence. Some stay weeks, others months. They come broken, frightened, ashamed. But by the time they leave, they've learned how to stand straight again. We cook real meals together, soups that smell of time and memory. We sing old songs while hanging laundry on the line. We plant herbs by the porch and tell stories that no one ever let us finish before. The house listens, always listens. Lily runs the reading circles now. She prints big letter pages, helps the women sound out difficult words, and cheers like they've conquered mountains when they finish a sentence. She painted a mural in the hallway, a garden growing out of cracked stone, with a line written in bright green paint. This is where broken things learn to bloom again. Sometimes when I watch her, I think of Lauren. I wonder where she ended up, whether she found her footing, or if she's still running from the echo of her own choices. I don't hate her anymore. I don't even pity her. I simply remember, because forgetting would mean erasing the lesson, and memory, real memory, is not a burden. It's a kind of armour. One rainy evening, Lily asked me, "Grandma, do you forgive her?" I smiled and brushed a loose curl from her forehead. "Yes, I do." She looked puzzled. "Then why don't you let her back?" "Because forgiveness is peace," I said softly. "But trust is a bridge you only rebuild if both sides still stand." She nodded slowly, understanding in that quiet, deep way children sometimes do. Now, every evening, I sit on the porch swing as the lamps glow inside. The laughter of women drifts through the open windows. The wind carries the smell of soup and wet earth. Above the gate hangs a wooden sign Lily painted herself, deep red letters on a pale blue board, "The House of Quiet Power," where voices once silenced finally learn to be heard. When I see that, I know my story is no longer just mine. It belongs to every woman who ever whispered I matter into an empty room and finally heard an answer. And sometimes, when the wind moves just right, I swear the house hums back, not with sorrow, but with the steady heartbeat of memory, grace, and peace that no one can erase. Final rehook, because strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply whispers, "I'm still here."